is the News Scene 2 special report, Colts, The Long Goodbye. Brought to you in part by your Baltimore area Toyota dealers, who ask, what will you do with all the money you save?
Good evening, I'm Scott Garceau, and indeed it has been a long goodbye. A long, agonizing, frustrating 2.5 months of waiting and wondering if the Baltimore Colts would be leaving town for good, at the whim of owner Bob Irsay. It has happened, the shock is setting in, emotions are running high. In the next hour, we'll try to pinpoint the whys and wherefores of it all, and where Baltimore goes from here. There has been chaos, confusion, and rumors, and tonight the memories of this long goodbye are vivid.
I have not any intention of campaigning. If I did, I would tell you about it.
Indianapolis that has a dome stadium with neither a football nor a baseball team. And can you imagine what the mayor out there is saying to him? What I'll do for you, I'll give you free rent, I'll give you this, I'll give you that to get the team out there?
And it's not like I know something that I'm not saying. I don't want it to be interpreted as the fact that this team's moving, because it really had no bearing on that specific thing. I think that the team has a good chance of staying. I hope it does, and I hope the people here will respond to it.
Pardon me?
Is today D-Day, Bob?
D-Day for what?
Decision?
No decisions.
No decision?
Oh, tell him.
Just information today?
No information. I got to go to the meeting.
Then Mr. Irsay addressed the membership. He came back in and addressed the membership, and he said that he has not made up his mind about what he wants to do. He's continuing to talk about with Baltimore, with Mayor Schaefer and the people in Baltimore. He acknowledged the highly publicized discussions he's had with other cities, and he said he had not made up his mind, but there's a possibility that he would move.
No comment.
Will there be a news conference later today?
No comment, I'm sorry.
Why is there so much secrecy about all of this? Why can't you comment?
No comment.
Will there be more negotiations today?
No comment.
How do you like Indianapolis?
It's very nice.
The two issues that had to be focused on were the long-term loan, the 15-year loan, and the question of his training facility. Within 4 days, including the weekend, the governor, this department, the city, and the corporate community got together and resolved those issues.
You know, I heard the rumors myself, and she said she had spoke with him, and he had mentioned that, you know, that
Nothing is final?
That nothing's final, that, you know, nothing's been signed, or, to my knowledge.
Had about a 3-hour meeting, and it went very well, and we left there with a very strong feeling that Bob Irsay, number one, is ready to move.
I understand you were in Indianapolis earlier today.
No comment.
You can't tell us why you're here?
No comment.
I'm sorry.
Thank you. The Colts had to sneak out of town at night. It degrades a great tradition of the city in football.
We'd been led to the brink so many times of late, it almost seemed like another false alarm when it finally began to come down last night. Jack Dawson narrates the final chapter.
Celebrated Irsay private jet, which his Colts organization pays for, by the way, had been in Indianapolis during the day, and then last evening it touched down in Baltimore, bringing Michael Chernoff, the Colts counsel and Irsay's right-hand man, into town for the last hurrah. Chernoff had no comment on his mission. No surprise, of course, because he never comments on anything. He was off to a Pikeville motel, and he didn't have any comment there either. We didn't have to wait long to find out what was going to happen. It looked like a scene from an old mystery picture. A fleet of large moving vans in the rain at the Colts complex in Owings Mills, and inside, Coach Frank Cush directing the project of heading them up and moving them out. Guards kept the media and the fans away, and then in the early morning, the vans began to roll out and head west. Mayor Schaefer was as low as a man could get when he realized the deed had been done without the promised call from Chicago.
I don't know.
But by afternoon, he'd begun to snap back.
We have some of the best legal minds working on it from all private sector, public sector. There's no reason why he wouldn't have accepted our, what I call our offer. There's none.
Jack Dawson, News Scene 2.
Today's weather matched the mood at the Colts complex perfectly. Susan White Bowden was there when the disbelieving Colts workers arrived.
By 10 o'clock this morning, most of the equipment and Colt memorabilia had been moved out of the Colt complex in Owings Mills. and the Colt employees had been told that the team was going to Indianapolis. Reactions from now former Colt employees and fans came fast and from the heart. What are your thoughts right now?
It's sad. I'm glad it's over. I'm just very sad right now.
Were you a fan as well as an employee?
I think I missed one game in 4 years.
When you have to sneak out in the middle of the night, don't inform your vested employees of your intentions. I don't want to work for people like that.
You say you wouldn't go?
I wouldn't go if I were, unless I were paid $1 million, and then I would have to think about it. Really, because I think these were very poor tactics with employees. That have, like I am entering my 11th year with the Baltimore Colts, and to not inform people of what's going to happen, I think is totally despicable.
You say you would no longer want to work for this organization?
Absolutely not. Wherever they go.
Well, I figured I'd take a look at the complex one last time. It's the sneakiest thing I've ever seen done in my life. I can't believe it. In 14 years, I missed one football game, and I just don't know what I'm going to do this fall, to tell you the truth.
Are you more angry or saddened?
I think both, a combination of both. I just can't believe this is happening.
You never forget the Colts.
Are you going to go on wearing that hat?
Absolutely. We're still going down our convention in June, in Ocean City, to corrals. We're not going to stop just because a team's gone. The band didn't stop in 50 and 51, so why should we stop? We've got 27 years involved at corrals with this ball club, so why should we stop? We'll be here when the new Colts come in.
We talk to you? We talk to you, please? One of the few people who'd have anything to say to reporters out at the Colt complex today was Colt lawyer Michael Chernoff. By midday, everyone had left the Colt complex. All that remained was one pickup truck owned by the team. The front gate has been locked to keep anyone from going in. And now Bob Irsay has an abandoned training center in one city, an equipment and a team in another. I'm Susan Wipeout, News Scene 2, Owings Mills.
By the way, those Colt employees were issued their final check today. It came from Baltimore Colts Incorporated, and it was issued from an Indianapolis bank. The state of Maryland and the city of Baltimore are not giving up. They're still scrambling to keep the Colts in Baltimore. City Hall reporter Kevin Brown is in our newsroom. Kevin, just what are they doing to try to save the Colts?
Well, today the state legislature, and it's signed quite quickly by the governor, passed legislation that would give the city of Baltimore the power, the specific power, to take over by eminent domain an NFL franchise, of course, meaning the Colts. I think it's quite likely that tomorrow the city of Baltimore will go to court and try to take advantage of that, using the power of eminent domain to keep the team here in Baltimore, Scott.
When we heard, first we saw the moving trucks leaving Owings Mills. Andy Barth told us the movers are in Ohio now. How can they seize anything when it's already out of town?
Of course, I'm not a lawyer, but talking to city officials, they don't feel that moving things out of the training complex is the same as moving the franchise. The Colts still have a lease at Memorial Stadium through June. As far as we know, Irsay has not signed anything in Indianapolis to make it official. He has not officially notified the National Football League, for example. They still think they have a shot, Scott.
Now, the city would have to buy the team from Bob Irsay. Dallas sold for $80 million at the meetings in Honolulu. I think Denver went for $70 million. Let's say the Colts were worth in the $50 million range. Where would the city get that kind of money to pay Bob Irsay?
Mayor Schaefer said the money would come probably from banks. Another city official said some kind of creative financing would be involved. It's something I think they probably could solve. And, of course, it would not really be city money because, in the end, the city, if it did acquire the franchise, would resell it to a private investor. Scott, now that the Colts talked about the possibility of the city taking them to court, the Colts have already been taken to Baltimore Circuit Court tonight. It was done by a Maryland bank. Equitable Bank says the Colts defaulted on a $2.5 million loan by moving the team out of Baltimore. That loan was used to build that training complex in Owings Mills. A Circuit Court judge tonight placed a lien on the Colts franchise and on its player contracts. That, too, could prevent or delay a Colts move. Now, Mayor Schaefer is not only unhappy that the Colts are leaving, he's unhappy at how the Colts are leaving. And he's also unhappy at how Irsay has behaved while the Colts were here.
I take this as sort of in a way, very personal. For 2 years, I mean, I've tried I had to live through Jacksonville, and I had to live in Memphis and Phoenix and all the rest of these. And we worked very, very hard, sometimes very quietly, sometimes with a little irritation. So in a way, this is personal. It gets to be very personal to me when someone that I thought would at least pick up the phone and say to me, I'm going. But we didn't.
One more thing I'd like to pass on. The city has maintained for a couple of months now that Irsay owes them back rent from last year. Today, Irsay sent a check to the city for that back rent, but Mayor Schaefer says the check is $20,000 short, and he may return it. Scott?
Thank you, Kevin. Well, it sounds like there's a lot of work to be done yet in the courts here. Still ahead in the Colts, the long goodbye, warm memories from key players in the golden years, Robert Irsay's private life, Colt fans turn to the birds for comfort, the media and the man, and one last look. Next, the story from the Midwestern winter. They thought Colts owner Robert Irsay would find difficult to refuse, but he did anyway. This is what the state was willing to offer. $6.5 million for the Colts training complex, a figure increased just this week. Guaranteed attendance of 43,000 people each game. A $15 million 10-year loan at only 8.5% interest. And that was increased from 3 years to 10 years just this Tuesday when Irsay added that demand. Mayor William Hudnut has refused to detail the specifics of his deal. We do know that it includes a similar low-interest loan, guaranteed attendance, and modest rent for the brand-new Hoosier Dome and a new training facility. Indianapolis was obviously the winner of the deal to make Irsay and the Colts their home, and obviously it was a deal that Bob Irsay couldn't refuse. Andy Barth is there now with the latest from the winner's locker room, I guess we can say. Andy?
I guess they're the winners. This was the day they put the points on the board here in Indianapolis. This was the day they became big league. No longer will they have to drive to Cincinnati or Chicago to see a pro football game. The games will be here in Indianapolis. At first today, everyone was a little reluctant to claim victory, not wanting to do anything to upset Bob and do anything that would harm the deal. No one would say it was over. But then this afternoon, Mayor Hudnut had a press conference and made it official.
Well, I'm sorry that Baltimore is broken-hearted this afternoon. I'm grateful that Indianapolis can rejoice. I think in the long run this is going to be a wonderful thing for our city and that we're going to be a magnificent NFL team.
No sooner had the word come forth than TV stations here began to promote the Indianapolis Colts. People in the downtown area were delighted.
I'm real excited about it. I'm really looking forward to it.
It'll be a big boost for our city, and I think the people will be really happy to have a team here.
I think it's good. I'm excited about it.
I think it'll be a great opportunity for the city of Indianapolis and for the people here.
Do you think people will actually go to games, care about the team?
Oh, by all means.
Sure, I'll support it, but I would feel much better if we had a locally owned team here in Indianapolis.
What would you say to people in Baltimore who are losing their team?
Too bad.
Colt officials Jimmy Irsay and Frank Cush are here, but not saying much. Bob Irsay has not been seen. It has been a big day here. There have been the special reports and live bulletins and the hype in TV and in print that I'm sure are going on in Baltimore too. And everyone is waiting for Irsay to arrive, kind of wondering what they've gotten into with the owner who it is most charitable to describe as erratic and unpredictable. We have some more on what kind of place the Colts have gotten into, where the former team will play their new home in the Hoosier Dome. Karen Dillon of WTVR says work is fast and furious to finish it up.
The Hoosier Dome is scheduled to open on May 1st. There's still quite a bit of cleaning up to do, but workers say the $80 million stadium is almost finished.
We have some minute finishing touches to complete back in public meeting rooms and that type of thing, but it's about 99.9 right now. The dome itself is basically ready to go. We could be ready to set up and to play football in 6 to 7 hours if necessary.
The ticket offices are about ready now. There'll be 60 different ticket windows. The 2 locker rooms for visiting teams should be complete in a week. They're a little smaller than the 2 locker rooms for the home team, but those aren't even started yet and won't be until the team owners decide what they want in here. 3 scoreboards have been ordered and are on their way. As for the seats, there'll be enough for 61,000 fans. Most luxurious will be the glass-enclosed suites, which will be halfway up. They're not even finished yet, but they will look like this model, complete with refrigerator and wet bar, closed-circuit TV, and all the comforts of your living room. Price tag, anywhere from $40,000 to $100,000. Yet they're selling like hotcakes.
We had 87 to start with, and I think we have like 66 of them now, or 67 sold.
The Hoosier Dome, though, is more than beautiful. It's also safe. This is one of the 4 water nozzles around the inside of the building, capable of spraying 1,500 gallons of water a minute out onto the playing floor. Firemen from around the state tested the system today.
We feel this system here is probably one of the safest in the world.
The seats themselves are non-flammable, and the concession stands, hallways, and entrances are all sprinkled. In Indianapolis, I'm Karen Dillon for News Scene 2.
That is an impressive place, the Dome. We were over there today, and they are working. They haven't yet put down what will pass as the grass, but they are getting it ready. You can see how it might appeal to Mr. Irsay. It is new, it is somewhat plastic, it lacks the character of Memorial Stadium. They're already making Colt T-shirts here, but not without some controversy. WTHR's Kim Hood has that report for us.
The label and colors may look the same, but the name is definitely different. Indianapolis Colts. That's the official team name being stitched and printed on the thousands of T-shirts and sweaters here in Indianapolis. Logo 7, the company which holds the rights to producing all NFL logos, says production is finally underway to fill orders for over 20,000 shirts. Shirts that will read Indianapolis instead of Baltimore.
Well, we've been preparing for this for 6 weeks, but we haven't known about it any further out than anybody else has. We just had an inclination that this was going to happen.
Ironically, the company was also prepared to continue producing the Baltimore Colts label, but official word came overnight to change the name and start filling orders by Saturday. The activity here, just another sign the move from Baltimore to Indianapolis was to be a reality. Kim Hood for News Scene 2.
I don't think people here are very much concerned yet about the record of the Colts and how they'll do. They're pleased just to have them here. Frank Kush, however, of course, is already here and working on making things go his way at the new training camp. Scott?
Andy, the 2 times I was in Indianapolis, when we'd meet people on the street, they would say to us, well, this guy's really not coming here, is he? He's done this before in other cities. Was there a surprise out there? Hey, the guy's coming?
I think they were surprised. I think it became almost hopeless for everybody concerned. He had to come somewhere. He's coming here, and they're pleased, but I think they have some sense that the man is not exactly the most predictable or even sometimes rational, so they're a little bit concerned about what they're getting into.
Okay, thank you, Andy. Like the fan said, I'm not sold on this Irsay guy, but it's the only game in town. Still ahead, the Golden Arm, the Golden Years. I'll talk live with Johnny Unitas and Tom Matte. Good show. The fans loved them, and all the Colts were heroes. Some of them became superheroes, and 7 of them became Hall of Famers. More from Jack Dawson.
Baltimore Colts in the Hall of Fame: Berry, Donovan, Eubank, Marchetti, Moore, Parker, and Unitas. And the head man in that group is a unanimous pick. John Unitas, the passer from Louisville who threw like a dream and who ran funny, personified the Colts in their glory years. He was the man in the spotlight when the Colts and the Giants brought pro football into the modern era in the 1958 championship game. It was that game that made pro football a hit on TV, with all the good stuff and bad stuff that would come from that. All those years, from 58 to 71, get lumped as the glory years to the Colt fans, and they were the Unitas years. When he said his goodbyes in a day at the stadium, as many as could showed up to listen.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I want you to know that I accept this on behalf of everyone who's ever put a football uniform on for the Baltimore Colt organization. Thank you for letting me share in a part of your life every Sunday afternoon, and thank you for sharing an important part of my life.
When Robert Irsay bought the Colts in '72, he called them the John Unitas Colts. Unitas was shipped to San Diego in January of '73. Jack Dawson, News Scene 2.
And with us live now in our studios, number 19, John Unitas, and Tom Matte of football and broadcast fame. Gentlemen, welcome. We've heard from both of you today, and I thought it was kind of interesting. I guess the quarterback has to be under control. You were rather reserved. Well, this guy was his bubbly self. And
he's hyper. He's constantly, I had to keep him quiet in the huddle for a second.
Obviously, this is quite a chapter in both of your lives, your years in Baltimore as football players and now as residents. First, John, your reaction to the last 24 hours and what's transpired.
Oh, I think it's a shame that the way things have been handled by Irsay, and you know, to sneak in and sneak out at nighttime, to me, is not a man at all. If you can't stand up there and face somebody, look at them eye to eye, and tell them, hey, I'm leaving town because this hasn't been I haven't been satisfied with this or this, and pick up and go. That's fine. But you know, to do that, sneak in and sneak out, is just utterly ridiculous. But I think football died here 10, 12 years ago anyway, with the changing of the franchises, and with Irsay coming in, Joe Thomas come in, they just raped the city, raped the football team, and at this point he's made prostitutes out of Baltimore, Indianapolis, Phoenix,
Memphis,
you name it, Jacksonville, and it's just, you know, a sad situation that a man like this can be allowed to come into professional football and do the things that he's done. He's taken his top franchise from the top to the outhouse in 12 years. And don't anyone kid you. When a fish starts to stink, it stinks from the head first.
Okay. Tom, I know your feelings are similar. Your last year in the league was Bob Irsay's first as the Colts owner.
That's both of ours.
Yeah. What do you think is the character flaw that he had that obviously you feel he came up very short as an owner that put us in the situation that we...
Well, I think the first move that he did, first move that we got was Joe Thomas. That was the downfall of the franchise at that particular time. And the thing that John reiterated on this is the fact the guy has no class. You're dealing with a guy who just does not have class. He doesn't even know how to be a man about it. Now, I don't know how he ever ran his business and was a success at it, because it's beyond me. And when he first came in, you can remember the speech, he came into our locker room prior to an exhibition season. We were down at Tampa, an exhibition game down there, and when he spoke, I said, how could this man ever have made enough money to buy a team? The other thing that I'm really upset is that the owners of the NFL let a guy like this come into the league. And that was the downfall, and it was just a continual, gradual decline of this whole franchise when he became the owner. And it's embarrassing.
Well, nothing's ever happened. The Roselle,
yeah.
the czar, the jerk, whatever you want to call him,
yeah.
He hasn't done anything.
He hasn't done anything.
The owners of this, Thomas said, hadn't done anything at all.
Don't you feel their hands have been tied a little by the courts, in fairness to the owners?
Well, they didn't do anything prior to that. See, Scott, even prior to the Oakland moving and now Baltimore moving and everything, the owners never did anything. Roselle, all he was a figurehead and a puppet up there, and what the owners told Roselle to do, he did. And it was, you know, and it's too bad that has to happen.
Both of you guys are active in the business community. First, a quick message to your fans, the people that you know not only from business but all your years on the field. What do you tell them tonight, those people that have been out there for Sunday after Sunday?
Well, what can you tell them? You know, they had a love affair with the Colts, the old Colts. It wasn't too good with the younger Colts. The fact that, hey, they can take your franchise away from you. You now have Sunday afternoon to fill up, a void to fill up, and maybe you can do things with your family, learn to do other things. But they can't take those memories away that you had, and that's the most important thing that you can look back at.
Anything to add there, Tom?
No, the thing that, you know, John was here before, and the thing that I always look back on is the tradition that we had here. The tradition of winning, the tradition of the camaraderie among the ball players and the fans. And this was the greatest love affair, I'm telling you. We used to go to these Colt Corrals, you saw Loudy out there. We'd go to those bars, have drinks, have a couple beers with the people, sit down and talk football to them. You know, we didn't expect anything back. The only thing we wanted to do is come and fill that stadium because we had the craziest fans in the world. They were the most loving. They were the most dedicated. Other teams hated to come in here. I mean, they they were scared to come in here because our fans were so, you know, so great. And let me tell you, if people think that the fans don't affect the ball game, they're crazy. I mean, we hear it on the field. John and I, God, you know, you could just see getting pumped up on the field when the fans went crazy. and we've lost that love affair.
Okay, they're gone, their history. From here, as businessmen and people active in the community,
well,
quickly, what do you
Scott,
suggest?
I think that, you know, we probably lost this thing 4 or 5 years ago when we refused to go out and build a new stadium. If they ever expect to get another franchise here with the NFL, the first thing the requirement's going to be made is they have a brand new stadium. And they're going to have all the different amenities that all the other stadiums have, the big plush boxes and everything else. So if they're looking for another franchise, they may as well start right now.
And the man to your left has enough money to get that thing
sure
going.
Did.
He's got so much now, he's quit counting and he's starting to bail it.
Thank you, John Unitas and Tom Maddy. The fans speak their minds, and insight into the man behind the move to move the Colts. That's coming up next.
I know you miss me. I know you miss me, the love. I know you miss me. I know you miss me. I know you miss me, the love. I know you miss me.
Vented their fury and frustration upon hearing the dirty deed was done. They couldn't say enough.
I've been following the Colts ever since I've been here, back 30 years ago. And it's a shame that a man has to come from out of town, buy him, and take him away from here.
It's an awful shame. I saw Mayor Schaefer this morning on TV. My sympathy was really with him. I think it's a terrible loss.
It's a shame the Colts are leaving, but they ought to got rid of Irsay and kept the Colts.
Baltimore fans never did think much of Robert Irsay, and I guess it was a mutual dislike. Joan Gartland takes a look at a side of the man the public never knew.
Robert Irsay is the kind of football team owner who likes to be in charge. Coach Mike McCormick learned that in 1981 when Irsay in the coach's booth started calling the plays against Philadelphia. The Colts lost that day, and 1 month later, Irsay fired McCormick, his 6th of 7 head coaches in 12 years. Throughout his tenure in Baltimore, Irsay, a millionaire businessman, has always called the shots. In the case of John Elway, he traded quarterbacks without the knowledge of his coach or general manager. But Irsay's problems always extended beyond his coaches and players to the news media and the fans. A 1981 News American survey showed 26% of those who stayed away from Colts games did so simply because they didn't like Bob Irsay.
It's just a pleasure to be here where people like you. I just don't think the people in Baltimore, maybe it's been the officials, just haven't come through.
Until now, the low point of that relationship was in 1979, when Irsay went to a mass rally at the Gator Bowl in Jacksonville, planned for the sole purpose of enticing the Colts and him to Florida.
Right now, it's a little early to say what will or can happen.
Irsay backed out of the Jacksonville deal, but since then has flirted with Memphis, Los Angeles, New York, Portland, Phoenix, and now Indianapolis. Despite that, Irsay recently denied he was going to move the Colts from Baltimore.
I have not any intention to move the goddamn team. If I did, I would tell you about it, okay?
Robert Irsay grew up poor in Chicago. He took a $3,000 loan from his wife, Harriet, and turned it into a multi-million-dollar air conditioning business. But his personal life has been marked by tragedy. One son born retarded, a teenage daughter killed in an automobile accident in 1972, the same year he bought the Colts. A third child, Jimmy Irsay, is a well-liked member of the Colts front office. The Colts media guide says Irsay graduated from the University of Illinois and served in the Pacific in World War II as a lieutenant in the Marine Corps. However, checks show that he only attended classes at Illinois and never graduated. Also, that he never served in the Pacific and was discharged as a sergeant after being court-martialed for a minor offense. Although Irsay has repeatedly told Mayor Schaefer he feels persecuted by the news media in Baltimore, most observers feel his main reason for leaving is cold, hard business. He wants to take his team where he can sell out a stadium and maximize his profits.
Joan Gartland, News Scene 2.
A twist of fate. Just as the Colts are fighting back, Irsay takes them away. Next, some improved play, and Baltimoreans pour their hearts out to the Birds. Seven and 9 under Mike McCormick in 1980, 2-14 and goodbye Mike in 81. And then the Frank Kush era began. No wins at all in 82, the strike year. And then in 83, one of the more dramatic turnarounds in NFL history. The new and very young and very inexpensive Colts team under the Kush no-nonsense approach to the game found a way to win 7 games, losing the other 9. But the fans' interest was beginning to stir, and there was hope 83 would be the last year the Colts would have the lowest home attendance in the league. We'll all be hearing a lot and reading a lot about what went wrong with the Colts and how that love affair between the Colts and the fans cooled down. Here's one to file away from a man who was on the inside looking out and struggling with absentee ownership. Bob Loeffler was director of sales and marketing, and what happened last night didn't surprise him one bit.
I think I've seen it coming for quite a while. You know, it's sort of a mentality type of a situation. They really kind of wanted to go, and whatever, you know, we did here in Baltimore to try to make things happen in the marketplace, they didn't really want a whole lot to do with that, and they had their minds made up, and I think they flirted with the idea of going for a long time, and I think they just got pretty far along this time, and they let it rip. But I don't think they ever really understood this market and what Colt football meant to Baltimore people, and I think that you know, they saw it as a commodity, and I think that's you know, it's a scarce commodity that's being bandied around from city to city, but I don't think they ever really understood it as a popular cultural entity in this marketplace.
It's a different story for the world champion Orioles. There's a love affair going on between this town and its baseball team. Evidence of that. Today, the Orioles' offices were flooded with calls from fans urging the team not to follow the Colts out of Baltimore. Horace Holmes has that story.
Well, good afternoon, Baltimore Orioles. Thank you. That line is busy. Would you like to hold?
The switchboard at the Baltimore Orioles offices at Memorial Stadium were swamped after word got out that the Colts were leaving town.
People wanted to know the attendance of the Colts last year, and a lot of the calls, people wanted to said that they were glad the Colts were gone and they hoped the Orioles stay.
Oriole fans buying tickets today at the stadium were also talking about keeping the Birds in Baltimore.
Okay, let's start this. Okay.
You a Colts fan too?
Not anymore.
What would happen if the Orioles went the same way that the Colts did?
Oh.
Same move too. Would you be upset?
Oh yeah, a lot more upset than I am now.
All the trophies and awards and pictures in the Orioles offices, marks of a sports team with a long, proud history. Baltimore's in love with the O's, and the O's are in love with Baltimore, an inseparable marriage. But there was a day when the same thing could have been said about the Baltimore Colts. Horace Holmes, News Scene 2, Baltimore.
Still ahead, the long and sour relationship between Irsay and the people who covered his team. Got rave reviews here, and it bothered him a lot. Here's what he had to say about the local media in his infamous news conference at BWI in January.
If you love the Colts, why don't you treat me right? I'm going to send you some articles. This man here, #1, and Stedman, a couple others, hang me all the time. What do you hang me for?
That's a reporter for a local paper that you're referring to.
No, I'm reporting to read the papers. What do you hang me for? You want me here? Why do you hang me? Wait.
Tonight we have two Baltimore sports writers, Phil Jackman and John Stedman, who was mentioned in Irsay's tirade, as well as our Jack Dawson, who's followed the Colts and their owners for years. Gentlemen.
Okay, here we sit. I guess we ought to take a picture of all three of us because we're the ones who shoulder the blame for all of this that has happened here. Bob and the media just never got along, or at least he sensed that he wasn't getting along with the media this time. You think that's fair, Phil?
No. As we were discussing a little while ago, that is the formula for getting out of town. You pick a fight with the local media. In Bill Veck's Hustler's Handbook, it happened in Kansas City. It happened in Milwaukee. They have to have something. They have to, in the fans' mind, that they're picking on us and we're going to have to leave town and all that business. So it's always going to end up our blame.
John, you'll remember a lot of years ago when another Colts owner called us all together to a very strange luncheon. When Carol Rosenblum brought us in and said, "Why don't you love me anymore?" And next thing you know, there'd been a swap.
I do have some recall of that, and hearkening back to what Phil talked about, I've searched the recesses of my mind trying to think of something of a positive nature that he's contributed to football in 12 years, and I can't think of a single thing.
Gentlemen, let's go back to this guy who says we don't get along with him. What kind of a guy was he for you guys to cover, to try to to try to cover as the owner of this town's football?
Hard man to handicap, I would say. You could always expect that he would do the opposite from what normal behavior would suggest. In trying to study him, I thought he was a man filled with all kinds of complexes. And I wasn't bright enough to read him, but he reminded me, like every neighborhood has one, that the only way he could ever get in the game is if he brought the ball.
Thing about Irsay in Indiana. I was sitting next to a kid from the Indiana News who was covering Indiana at the regional basketball last week, and I dragged out the old line that Joe McGuffley used when the A's left Kansas City with Finley. You know, he wrote in the paper the next day that Oakland is the luckiest city since Hiroshima. And I said this to this kid, and he said he's already knows Irsay. They have been run around the block over there in Indianapolis, and you know, if he thought he had a tough press, it was just normal. Can you imagine if he'd have gone to New York, the New York Post? Oh my God.
How about Philadelphia funeral? I don't know why I retain these dates. Maybe I don't have many important things to think about, but it was January 18th, 1951, the Blackstone Hotel in Chicago, when Baltimore withdrew illegally from the National Football League, and they waited 2 years with a strong legal fight and really brought the National Football League to its knees. And then when there was ready to be a settlement and they wanted to talk terms in a monetary way, Zamble Krieger, bless his soul, went and said that we're interested only in righting a wrong. We want to see a football team come back, and we don't want money. We can't put money at the 50-yard line. So the Dallas Texans were transferred here. We took over a bankrupt franchise and moved it on. I think the same thing can happen now. I believe that we shouldn't be quick to react, but we should move with assurance, with a lot of depth and forethought.
Done worse than this one is. It's that shoestring over there.
Gentlemen, before we get in more trouble, that about does it from here, Scott.
Okay, thank you, Jack and gentlemen. A look back on what we lost coming up next. Colts reign here. Glory, tradition, pride, champions, all words that describe one of the greatest franchises in the NFL's history. They're gone but not forgotten. Jack Bowden with one last look.
The comeback began by tearing down the old stadium on 33rd Street, a move spearheaded by then-Mayor Thomas D'Alessandro the Elder, and by building a new stadium, and by launching a successful season ticket drive to prove that Baltimore fans would support a team. We got the Dallas Texans franchise and their blue and white team colors, but we called them the Colts. A huge preseason trade with the Cleveland Browns gave us 10 of their players, including a defensive back named Don Shula, and the Colts gave the Browns 5 players, including a tackle named Mike McCormick. Both McCormick and Shula would, of course, eventually coach the Colts. 3 years later, the Colts' #1 draft choice, an explosive running back from Penn State named Lenny Moore, was named NFL Rookie of the Year. And a quarterback named Johnny Unitas, rejected by the Pittsburgh Steelers and playing semi-pro ball, was picked up by the Colts, and a dynasty was born. His incredible passing, his ability to read defenses, and his cool leadership under pressure, combined with other All-Pros such as Alan Amici, Artie Donovan, Jim Parker, Gino Marchetti, and the extraordinary pass receiver Raymond Berry, made the Colts a legend. In 1958, under Coach Weed Eubank, the Colts won their first divisional and league championships. That title game against the New York Giants, the fabled sudden death overtime contest, is considered by some to be the greatest game ever played, but it was definitely the game that brought pro football into the modern era. In 1959, at Memorial Stadium, with Richard Nixon in the stands, the Colts did it again, beating the Giants again to win their second consecutive world title, and Unitas even showed off his running skills. And with national media attention, the Baltimore fans' devotion earned Memorial Stadium the nickname of Insane Asylum on 33rd Street. There were more wonderful years and more championships. But in 1972, Robert Irsay bought the Colts, and with Joe Thomas as general manager, most of the old Colts began to disappear. Unitas said farewell the following year, and it's never been quite the same. Although under Coach Ted Marchibroda, the Colts won 3 consecutive Eastern Division titles in 1975, 76, and 77. But in case you've forgotten, it was also 1977 when Irsay first mentioned plans to move the Colts to Indianapolis. Of course, Irsay made other threats to move the Colts to other places before and since 1977. New Colt players and coaches and management personnel have come and gone. The latest, General Manager Ernie Accorsi, who resigned last month. And now, just as Coach Frank Kush seems on the verge of rekindling the old Colts spirit and glory, the whole team is leaving. I'm Jack Bowden, News Scene 2.
And so tonight, Baltimore tries to dust herself off after the events of the last 20 years. Bob Irsay jilted the mayor and local Colt fans with the touch of a blacksmith. He's off to the spectacular Hoosier Dome and an apparent sweetheart deal. For Baltimore, it's time to regroup, not sulk. Let the political leaders give Irsay our best shot in the courts, but don't count on it. It's the people of Baltimore, not a judge, that can turn this thing around. A fire that burned out of control for so many years on 33rd Street can be rekindled. Baltimore is better than Bob Irsay, and it'll take a lot more than Irsay's jilt to beat the spirit of the mayor and the people. Let the search for pro football begin. There's a team and owner out there we can all be proud of. Good night, everybody.
Hit the road, Jack. Don't you come back no more, no more, no more, no more. Hit the road, Jack. And don't you come back no more.
What you say? It's just a pleasure to be here where people like you. And I just don't think the people in Baltimore, maybe it's been the officials, just haven't come through.
Hit the road, Jack. Don't you come back no more, no more, no more, no more. Hit the road, Jack. And don't you come back no more.
I have not any intention of moving the goddamn team. If I did, I would tell you about it, okay?
Oh, woman, don't treat me so mean. You're the meanest old woman that I've ever seen. I guess if you say so, I'll have to pack my things and go.
The Colts had to sneak out of town at night. It degrades a great tradition of the city in football.
That's right, hit the road, Jack. Don't you come back no more, no more, no more, no more. Hit the road, Jack. And don't you come back no more. What you say?
Chairman of that Capital Improvements Board said in their negotiations with him it never appeared that he, quote, had horns and a tail. Perhaps that only means they don't know him very well yet.
Road, Jack. And don't you come back no more, no more, no more, no more. Hit the road, Jack. And don't you come back no more.
Said for the very ungentlemanly way in which the ownership handled the matter.
Well, I guess if you say so, I'll have to pack my things and go. That's right, hit the road, Jack. And don't you come back no more, no more, no more, no more. Hit the road, Jack. And don't you come back no more. What you say?
When you have to sneak out in the middle of the night, don't inform your vested employees of your intentions. I don't want to work for people like that.
The road, Jack. And don't you come back no more, no more, no more, no more. Hit the road, Jack. And don't you come back no more.
Well,
don't you come back no more.
What you said?
Don't you come back no more.
I didn't understand
Don't you come back no more.
You can't mean that.
Don't you come
Oh, now, baby, please.
Don't you come back no more.
What you trying to do to me?
Colts, the long goodbye. Brought to you in part by your Baltimore area Toyota dealers who ask, what will you do with all the money you save?
On frogs. Oh, dead end. A balloon. Gold in the Raj diamond. Condors.